I've been in therapy since before my husband Jai and I even met, as I've had severe treatment-resistant depression since I was a teenager. In my 20s, I realized that mental health was something I had to stay on top of in order to be a good partner. So I found a therapist I worked well with and saw them for years. Eventually, they moved out of state, so I shopped around for a while until I found a therapist, Miles, who was a good match, and I have been seeing them weekly for the past 2.5 years. I'd been doing regular talk therapy and some DBT, CBT for most of this time, but recently Miles and I agreed that my progress using this modality had stalled out. In fact, I've been backsliding a bit due to some other stressful life events, and that it might be time to look at incorporating other modalities. When I got home from that session, Jai asked me how therapy was as usual, and I told him what Miles and I had talked about. Jai immediately went into a panic and started rambling at me about how most people who practice any sort of alternative modality are quacks, and that it could be dangerous, and he didn't want me doing any of it. I was a little shocked by his reaction, so I just waited for the rant to finish and then dropped the subject. For context, Jai has a bachelor's degree in psychology, but he never practiced. Instead, he ended up switching career paths and becoming a CNA. I don't see any shame in changing directions at all. Heck, my degree was in political science, and now I work at a museum. And in my opinion, Jai is still getting a lot of use out of his degree in his day-to-day interactions with patients who are scared or in pain. Nonetheless, this is something that he's extremely sensitive and defensive about. So I avoid bringing it up. In my honest opinion, Jai could also use therapy himself because he readily admits he has crippling anxiety and it leads to him spiraling and catastrophizing easily. But he insists that he doesn't have the time or money due to his stressful job and student loans and that he knows what a therapist would recommend anyway, so he can just do those things on his own. I personally think this is mostly nonsense, but he's an adult and can make his own decisions, and his job is objectively stressful AF. So I've learned to let it go. Back to the point, over my next few sessions with Miles, we spent some time talking about various options that I also researched in my spare time. Eventually, we settled on a newer treatment method that has shown huge promise for situations like mine. I personally know 2 people who have done this type of therapy, and it was life-changing for both of them. And another clinician in Miles's practice is trained and licensed in the modality and would be able to facilitate it. Unfortunately, I think it's the exact sort of thing Jai would balk at. Because not to get too specific, not sure what the rules are here, it's one of the therapy types that involves taking a controlled substance in a clinical setting. The more I research about this treatment, the worse I feel. It has the potential to help me work through some things that have plagued me for almost 30 years and that I thought I'd just have to live with forever. And that gives me so much hope. But at the same time, I worry I'd be destroying my relationship with my husband if I go through with it. I don't want to do it behind his back. I would hate to be dishonest with him, and am a terrible liar anyway. But I have no idea how to gently tell him, hey, I know you have really strong feelings on this, but I ultimately believe the advice of the licensed and practicing therapist I've built years of trust with, over the opinion of someone who studied the theory years ago, but never worked in the field. And part of me feels angry that he's trying to tell me what I should do with my mind and body, while another part of me understands that once you're married, your decisions aren't 100% your own either. I know that if Jai suddenly decided he was going to start smoking cigarettes or something, it would technically be his right to do what he wants with his body. But people would also probably have my back if I drew an ultimatum about it, for example. I don't know, I'm at a complete loss for what to do here. How can I navigate this situation without betraying myself or my husband in the process? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Hey, I know you have really strong feelings on this, but I ultimately believe the advice of the licensed and practicing therapist I've built years of trust with, over the opinion of someone who studied the theory years ago, but never worked in the field. This is what you think, and it's correct, but it's not what you should tell him. I think your argument should strictly be, can you respect me enough to make my own decisions? Or will you make me choose between a treatment that holds great promise and my relationship to you? While another part of me understands that once you're married, your decisions aren't 100% your own either. I think there's nuance to this one. If you have children, should you get to unilaterally decide to go on a 3-month backpacking trip through Iraq and Syria? Well, obviously not. But if you're childless and it sounds like contrary to his, the only person suffering the consequences of your mental illnesses. And what you're choosing to do is a safe kind of therapy that shouldn't affect him in any way. Then I'd say that decision is much closer to the 100% than the previous example. If Jai suddenly decided he was going to start smoking cigarettes or something, it would technically be his right to do what he wants with his body. But people would also probably have my back if I drew an ultimatum about it, for example. Well, yeah, exactly, and that's a good thing. We can't and shouldn't force people into doing what we want. We can only control whether we want to continue our relationship with them, which brings us back to the ultimatum. I assume you love your husband, so despite all your concerns, if the roles were reversed, I'm fairly certain you'd want them to try all they thought was necessary to feel better. I think this is a question that's fair to ask of him. Why doesn't he want the same thing for you? Clearly, he must know having a degree in psychology doesn't make you a clinical expert. Crucially, he didn't undergo the other 4+ years of actual clinical training, which would allow him to be able to judge these things. So why is his hubris about his knowledge in psychology more important to him than your potential well-being? Comment 2. Oh dear. There is a reason why doctors aren't allowed to practice on their own family, and why your therapist can't also be your friend. There's a reason why therapists have therapists. If Jai admits he has crippling anxiety that affects his day-to-day life and doesn't think treatment could benefit that, I think it's a fair bet that he doesn't actually know what a therapist would say to him. You know your husband best. If he feels like he has academic knowledge on this subject, could he be steered towards scientific research on the modality? If he's worried about the danger, could that be put into some context? Everything can be dangerous done wrong after all. If he's just unfamiliar, could he talk to the people you know who this treatment worked for? If there's something specific he's worried about, taking those concerns seriously and doing what you can to address them may go a long way. Alternatively, I think it's really important to follow the advice of my healthcare team. Might be hard for him to argue with if he's also in healthcare. If the real concern is, I'm unfamiliar with it, so therefore it's scary and bad and I'm not willing to become familiar with it, that's not a problem you can fix on your own. At that point, the remaining scripts look like being very patient and sympathetic to his fear and doing it anyway. Deciding you'd rather live with the health issues than upset your husband, and asking him why he thinks your healthcare is his call to make, though that's a lot more of an explosive option. I also don't think the smoking is a totally fair comparison. I understand your point, but there's a pretty big difference between, I don't want you to start this expensive behavior that's going to damage your health and possibly mine, and which will be very difficult to stop later, is pretty different than, I don't want you to get needed medical treatment because I don't personally agree with it. You might also run this by your therapist if you haven't already. Now, for the update. Thanks for the support on my last post. Well, things have escalated since then. I decided to tell Jai about the therapy, and as expected, he lost it. He accused me of not valuing his opinion and stormed out. I was left there, feeling like a mess, but also a bit relieved that I'd finally said it. The next day, I found out Jai had been talking to his mom about our issues. She's always been a bit overbearing, and now she was on my case, telling me I was being selfish for considering this therapy. She even brought up how Jai had given up his psychology career for a more stable job to support us, as if I owed it to him to follow his advice on my treatment. But here's the thing. Jai's mom didn't know the whole story. Jai had actually been fired from his last job in psychology because he'd been caught falsifying patient records. He was ashamed, and that's why he switched careers. I'd kept his secret, respecting his privacy. But now his past was being used against me. I was fuming. I couldn't believe Jai would drag his mom into this, especially when he had his own skeletons. I needed to clear my head, so I went to see Miles. We talked it through, and he helped me see that I had to do what was right for me, even if it meant standing up to Jai and his mom. I went home ready to face the music, but I walked into a surprise. Jai was there, looking guilty. He'd been doing some thinking and had realized he was projecting his own issues onto me. He apologized and said he'd support whatever decision I made about the therapy. I was shocked, but relieved. we decided to go to a couples therapy session to work through our communication issues. It was tough, but it helped us understand each other better. Jai even admitted he needed to deal with his anxiety and past mistakes. Just when things were looking up, another bomb dropped. Jai's old boss contacted him, threatening to expose his past if Jai didn't pay him off. Jai was terrified it would ruin his current job and our reputation. I was angry that his past was coming back to haunt us, but I knew we had to face it together. We decided not to give in to the blackmail. Instead, we gathered evidence of the boss's own unethical behavior, which Jai knew about but had never disclosed. We confronted the boss, and it turned out he had more to lose than we did. He backed off, and we were left to pick up the pieces. It's been pretty up and down, but through it all, I've learned that honesty is crucial, and facing our problems, no matter how tough, is the only way forward. Thanks for reading. Aita, for considering leaving my boyfriend who thinks being lazy is a personality trait. ADHD is not an excuse. I, 27-year-old female, have very severe ADHD, and I know that he, 27-year-old male, has ADHD as well. But the problem is that my boyfriend is too lazy to critically think or reflect on anything. I know this topic is full of similar posts about a loving, attentive, well-meaning boyfriend who just seems to lack common sense and critical thinking skills. But the conclusion of those posts tends to universally be, he has ADHD and medication. I'm a clinical psychologist. Again, I have ADHD as well. And while I understand we all have different levels of executive function and varying abilities to complete tasks, my boyfriend has expressly made laziness part of his identity. Anytime I ask him to do any task, big, small, 1 step, 4 steps, immediately, tomorrow, anything, he says that's too much work. And it's not about me, because that's his reaction to anyone. If he's playing a game with his friends and they suggest he grab an extra weapon he will definitely need, he says, hey, that's work, and will literally die in the game rather than do those extra steps. So when it comes down to behaving like a complete idiot when put in the position to critically think or reflect on information, he will just not. He was raised by an idiot, misogynistic, unmotivated father, and his mother, who is a hard worker, seems to think for them both, and I think I might have to break up with him before I end up living a similar life. And it's extremely difficult because even as a grown man, he worships his father and blames his mother for their recent divorce, because why couldn't she just be happy instead of constantly trying to push his father to do more and more? He doesn't see that his father is an idiot, nor that his mother should have left him long ago. So as a result, he lives life with no critical thought like his father, and, as another Redditor so well put it, just does things based on what he feels would be a good choice, instead of taking 10 seconds to think about what to do. His father's convinced this grown man that as long as you tried, you did it. It doesn't matter if there were directions or a specific intended goal. Just trying anything at all is more than enough effort for him. And that is incorrect 100% of the time. For example, I visit his house and have to clean the shower before I get in because it's typically dirty. One time I was unable to finish the cleaning, only able to sprinkle the Comet around. I asked him to finish cleaning it for me, and he just rinsed all the cleaner off. Didn't think to use the scrubber or any other sort of cleaning tool. Just rinsed it all off. Was there a single reflective thought about the resulting appearance of the shower? No, because he did what I asked at all, so he must have done it correctly. I'm just being picky. We've had many conversations about this. He's cried because it seems like no matter what he does, he can't do anything right. And while I would never want him to feel like an objective failure, I wish I could disagree and highlight things that he does in fact do correctly. He takes any criticism as a personal attack, which deeply emotionally hurts him. On top of that, he always dismisses me and my concerns as being picky, which hurts my feelings. Because what the frick makes? You just know that everything on earth just has no correct way to do it or intended outcome. If I tell you to feed the dogs, why not change their water too? Yes, there is still technically water in their bowl from 24 hours ago, but it's less than a half-inch deep, and who doesn't need fresh water on a daily basis? What one organism? Please tell me, because I've had this specific conversation with him so many times and he still refuses to change their water, which ultimately makes me feel like I'm crazy. The time it takes to refill water, not even with the bare minimum expectation of washing out the used bowl, which would of course be too much, is about 20 seconds more than just feeding them. And this doesn't stop with household tasks. Those just come to mind easily. But the overall issue is a refusal to participate in critical thinking. If I want him to complete a task completely, I need to give him specific directions, usually in writing, as well as a verbal reminder again immediately before he does it, or else he will completely forget any directions and just do whatever he feels like doing, which usually messes up some plan. Like the others, I love him and he is a very loving person and partner, but I wanted to know if there were any sort of courses or apps to look to for basic critical thinking development. The process of using multiple sources of information to solve problems, thinking about the best option of the ones you have, and how to plan anything at all are skills that I remember learning and practicing in elementary school. So I'm hoping there are any resources not focused on phonetic reading, or something that I could direct him to/work on with him. As a literal clinical psychologist, the ADHD is only part of the problem, but the lifelong atrophy of problem-solving skills is not something medication will address. Individual counseling can help with the self-esteem, which certainly plays a part. But learning how to put a square peg in a square hole instead of slamming it into every hole there is until it works is something he and a lot of these other men, trained to be thoughtless meatbags, needs more than anything. Sorry, I'm so angry about a specific conflict earlier this afternoon. So I know my tone is reflecting that, but Jesus flipping Christ, I need help. And y'all are the last resource I have confidence in. We've discussed weaponized incompetence. He clearly makes more effort on the specific tasks I highlight to him, but not enough progress globally. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, you can't change him and you shouldn't try. If he ever wants to change, then he'll either do it himself or ask for advice from the people in his life at the time. Change is hard, so it has to come from within him. And if you keep trying to solve all of his problems for him, he'll never have any incentive to try. I think before you look at him, you need to do some serious introspection with regard to the parts of you that need to change. Why have you let yourself stay in a dead-end relationship this long? Why are you dating a filthy scrub of limited intelligence? I'm not even judging him. I've never met the guy, so that's all from your description. Does it make you feel good, imagining that he needs you to get by? Does it let you feel superior? At least my life is better than his. You're getting something out of this relationship, which is why you're still there. Work out what that is and find a different way to deal with it. Scratch that itch. Because it doesn't seem like this is the kind of life you want for yourself. So work out how to disentangle yourself from him financially and emotionally, and then move on with your life. You only get one life. Make it one you're happy with. Comment 2. This is not a critical thinking issue. You don't need critical thinking to give the dogs clean water or clean a shower. He is not a loving person and partner. Loving people give their dogs water and have the consideration to make their living space usable for others when they visit. You could give him all of the resources in the world, and he wouldn't make use of them. He is a grown adult, and you are treating him like a child and asking for resources you use in elementary school. Stop infantilizing this adult man. He's not a patient of yours. He's someone you want to have a partnership with, someone you should be able to count on to take care of you if you can't take care of yourself, someone who will remember to do important things like pay bills and meet deadlines, someone you can trust to raise children with you, even if you don't want kids. Would you trust this man with a child for even a few hours? Someone you can build a future with. He is clearly not that person. What would you tell a client in your position? Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So, the other day, my boyfriend's best friend, let's call him Mark, came over. Mark's always been the kind of guy who seems to have it all together, you know? Anyway, he's over and we're all hanging out when suddenly he starts talking about this new job opportunity he's got. It's a big deal and he's excited, but then, out of nowhere, he asks my boyfriend to join him in this new venture. I'm thinking, great, maybe this will be the push he needs, right? Wrong. My boyfriend turns him down flat. Says it's too much effort to switch jobs and learn new things. Mark looks at me, and I can tell he's as shocked as I am. But here's the kicker. Mark then turns to me and offers me the job. He says he's seen how I handle things, how I'm always picking up the slack, and he thinks I'd be perfect for it. I'm floored. I mean, it's an amazing opportunity, but it feels like a betrayal, offering it to me right in front of my boyfriend. I tell Mark I need to think about it, but inside, I'm screaming yes. The next few days are a mess. My boyfriend is sulking, acting like I've already taken the job and left him behind. I haven't even said yes, but he's treating me like I'm the one who's betrayed him. And I'm torn because this job could be everything I've wanted, but it's also driving a wedge between us. Then, as if things couldn't get more complicated, my boyfriend's mom calls me. She's heard about the job offer from Mark and is begging me to take it. She says she doesn't want me to end up like her, stuck cleaning up after a man who won't lift a finger. She's crying, telling me she sees so much of herself in me, and that I have a chance to escape the life she's lived. I'm feeling guilty, angry, and confused. I love my boyfriend, but I'm starting to see what his mom means, and yet I can't bring myself to just walk away. I keep hoping he'll change, that he'll step up and prove everyone wrong. But deep down, I know it's not going to happen. So I'm still here, still cleaning up messes, still hoping for a change that's never going to come. Mark's given me a deadline to decide about the job, and I can feel the pressure mounting. It's like I'm on the edge of a cliff, and I can either jump and hope I fly or stay where I am and keep wondering what could have been. Thanks for reading this mess of an update. Aita for dumping my boyfriend after finding dating apps and my photos on his phone. My boyfriend, who I've been in a long-distance relationship with for 1 year, came to visit me in my country after a trip he took to Europe on his way back to his country. Everything about our relationship is normal, and he is very caring and consistent. However, when he came to visit me, I noticed 2 notifications from different dating apps on his phone. When I asked him about it, he claimed that all the apps from his old phone were automatically installed on his new phone when he switched devices. The dating apps were in a hidden folder, but he forgot to mute the notifications. The first app had messages from 2022, while the second app had new pictures and said he was looking for friends. There was no chat but one match. He explained that he had a drunken challenge with his friends one night to upload new pictures on Tinder and find a match, but there were no actual conversations on the app. The app was downloaded in April, but he changed his phone in February. He said his new phone hadn't finished configuring all the old apps from his previous phone. I'm uncertain whether to believe his explanation or not. When I asked about this hidden folder, I found that he takes intimate pictures of me without my consent and pictures of girls' bums at the beach or the pool wearing bikinis, which disgusted me and creeped me out. He also has intimate pictures of his male friends with other girls. He said that his friend asked him to keep them, which I find really weird. He also keeps liking pictures of half-naked Insta models on IG, although I told him how I feel about it. One time he was zooming on a half-naked model's butt while we were in bed. I confronted him about all of this, but of course, he denied everything, deleted the pictures in front of me, unfollowed some models, and kept some. He cried and said he wants to improve himself. 1 week later, another on a half-naked girl, and he says no. She is a famous actress in his country. I decided to break up with him, but I didn't tell him yet. I have major anxiety problems and attachment issues. So I decided not to break up with him radically. However, I told him I need some time alone. He is now on a trip to Brazil. God knows what he is doing there now, and I can't sleep for days. I'm very anxious. I spent the first day crying and throwing up. Did anyone ever experience this? I feel that I am still in a state of shock with too many intense emotions to process. I spend the whole day stalking him and his friends to see what he is doing. Please help me. How can I do this? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. He sounds unpleasant. It's natural for most people to be interested in intimacy videos occasionally, but it seems like it's a problem for him, especially if he's engaging in inappropriate behavior in front of you. The pictures of you without your consent are definitely a cause for concern. He seems immature and too young for you. You won't be able to change someone like him. If you confront him, he'll just engage in these actions behind your back. Find someone else who isn't obsessed with intimacy. Comment 2. Considering your previous posts, it seems like you seek a lot of validation for your emotions. Well, I want to validate your feelings. I'm curious to know which country both of you are from. It seems to me that he perceives you as being of a lower social class and not intelligent enough to understand the truth, which unfortunately you already do. It's best to move on from this situation as you will be better off. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around after my last update. So here's what went down in the past 2 weeks. After I told him I needed some time alone, he went silent for a few days. Then out of the blue, he sends me this long message about how he's been doing some soul searching in Brazil and realized how much he's hurt me. He promised he'd change for real this time. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But then my friend sends me a screenshot. It's him on a beach in Brazil, cozying up with some girl in a bikini. And guess what? It's all over social media. I was fuming. I called him up, ready to end things once and for all. But he had an excuse ready. Said the girl was just a friend from the trip, nothing more. I almost fell for it, but then I remembered the hidden folder, the dating apps, the lies. I couldn't let him play me for a fool again. So I did something I never thought I'd have the guts to do. I logged into his Instagram account. Yeah, I know his password. He once logged in from my phone and never logged out. I found DMs with multiple girls, flirty messages, plans to meet up. It was like a slap in the face. I took screenshots of everything, sent them to myself, and then I confronted him. He tried to deny it at first, but the evidence was right there. He couldn't talk his way out of it this time. I told him we were done, for good. He begged, he pleaded, said it was all a big mistake, but I wasn't having any of it. I blocked him on everything, phone, social media, you name it. But that's not even the end of it. A couple of days later, I get a call from a number I don't recognize. It's the girl from the beach in Brazil. Turns out, she had no idea he had a girlfriend. She was furious and apologized to me. We ended up talking for a while, and she told me she's been through something similar before. It was weirdly comforting to know I wasn't alone in this mess. Now I'm trying to pick up the pieces of my life. I've been hanging out with friends, trying new hobbies, just keeping busy. It's hard, but I'm getting there. I still have moments where I want to check up on him, see what he's doing, but I resist the urge. I need to move on. And then yesterday I got a package. No return address, but I recognize his handwriting. Inside was a letter and a bunch of photos, the ones he'd taken of me without my consent. He said he was sorry, that he'd deleted them from everywhere, and that I deserved better. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. At least he's taking some responsibility finally. So that's where I'm at. It's been pretty hard on us, but I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm better off without him. It's not easy, but I'm getting through it one day at a time. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.